the most modern front-wheel drive of its time, voted European Car of the Year in 1970. Produced until 1983 in Italy and 1990 in Argentina. You guessed it, it is the Fiat 128, this avant-garde little Italian car that would evolve into a most complete range. At the very end of the 60s, Fiat had to replace its aging 1100R, whose design dated back to the early 50s. For its replacement, engineer Dante Giacosa managed to convince Fiat management, and especially Gianni Agnelli, who took over the company in 1966, that it had to be front-wheel drive. To do this, he relies on the road-handling qualities of the Primula. This sedan, rejected at the time by Fiat, has been a great success for Autobianchi since 1964. Remember that Autobianchi is partly owned by Fiat, which uses it as a sort of laboratory. Now, this Primula is not only front-wheel drive, but features a transversely mounted engine with a gearbox placed at the end of the crankshaft rather than under the engine. This solution is possible thanks to a certain miniaturization of the clutch. The result? Minimal space requirements. This is how the new Fiat 128 would inherit these technical solutions, to its great benefit. A choice that would set a trend and be adopted a few years later by Volkswagen for its Golf. Furthermore, this monocoque features 4 independent wheels with McPherson-type suspension at the front and rear, with shock struts and transverse swinging arms with a transverse leaf spring. As is standard and quite classic, the brakes are disc and drum. The engine block is also particularly modern. Designed by Aurelio Lampredi, it is a 4-cylinder with an overhead camshaft, a 5-bearing crankshaft, and a timing belt. This 1,116 cubic centimeter block, which develops 55 horsepower, is paired with a 4-speed gearbox with a floor-mounted shifter. A final drive ratio change was made in 1976 to improve fuel economy. This 3-meter 85 sedan is offered in 2- or 4-door versions. The design of this 3-box car is classic and somewhat resembles that of the Fiat 124. The side is distinguished by a cabin that seems a bit high-set and a rear that is much shorter than the front. The front end features round headlights set into a grille that curves beneath them. The turn signal parking lights are housed on the corner of the fenders, which are themselves slightly protruding. The rear is very simple, with a perfectly smooth panel housing 2-part rectangular taillights with chrome surrounds. The front and rear bumpers are similar, meaning straight, with thin bumper guards. In 1972, the 128 received a new black grille with chrome trim, bumpers that lost their guards, and slightly modified taillights. 2 years later, the Special appeared with a 1.3-litre engine producing 60 horsepower, allowing it to reach 145 km per hour. A block identical to the rally version, a little less powerful, but we will come back to that. This Special is distinguished by square headlights, but also a rear end incorporating reversing lights, depending on the country. In 1976, the Fiat 128 received a flush grille with the square headlights from the Special, now standard on all versions, along with chrome side trim on every model and new, larger taillights with a more distinctive design. Larger, more wraparound bumpers made of synthetic material are also installed. A few months after the sedans, Fiat launched a station wagon version called Familiare, available as a 3-door. While the front end is identical, vertical lights were installed to allow the tailgate to open in one piece. However, the profile seemed somewhat unbalanced. The cause is a steep slope of the tailgate and the slight rear overhang. This stylistic choice is reminiscent of the Autobianchi Primula profile. In conclusion, this 128 seems to hesitate between a station wagon and a hatchback. These versions would follow the various aesthetic and mechanical updates of the sedans and eventually take the name Panorama. In parallel, from 1971 to 1974, Fiat offered a sportier version, the 128 Rally. Black grille, additional headlights, front bumper in two halves, connected by a thinner chrome bar, 4 round tail lights borrowed from the 850 Sport, sports rims, decorative stripes on the side sills. This version certainly has style. Under its hood, a 1,290 cubic centimetre engine that develops 70 horsepower and allows the machine to reach 150 km per hour and clear 0 to 100 km per hour in under 13 seconds. A 128 Rally whose road handling fully allows one to exploit this little potential. Seats with headrests and a bench seat covered in black vinyl, a sport steering wheel, and more complete instrumentation including a tachometer, engine temperature gauge, and oil pressure gauge are also on the menu. The interior of the Fiat 128 is meant to be simple and robust. It therefore features very classic lines with a dashboard lacking much flair, with a recessed instrument cluster that includes 2 large dials, including a speedometer separated by a column of warning lights. The equipment is relatively brief, and the seats are adorned with vinyl upholstery. In 1974, the Special was a bit more luxurious, with decorative elements on the dashboard, carpeting on the floor, more comfortable seats, and specific upholstery. As the years went by, the interior became a bit more refined with a new dashboard, more comfortable upholstery, and increased equipment. As is often the case in Italy, many specialists or coach builders took hold of the Fiat 128 upon its release, such as Giannini, Lombardi, and a few others like Moretti, who, 1 year after the 128th release, offered a very elegant coupe and its Targa version. In 1971, Fiat launched its own 128 coupés, also called 128 Sport. As always with the Turin manufacturer, the coupés and sedans of the same model share almost no body parts. This is once again the case with the 128, which features a profile marked by a rise at the rear wheels, a sort of Italian interpretation of the Coca-Cola line, very popular at that time. A stubby rear end that gives it a stocky look. Available in S or SL versions, the first features square headlights, while the second offers 4 round lights and its own unique grille. The rear end is shared, with fairly wide vertical lights and a smooth panel featuring a central decorative strip on the SL versions. As for the interior, it is quite similar to that of the 128 Rally. While the platform is indeed that of the 128, its wheelbase has been shortened by more than 20 centimeters. The running gear is identical, but with a few modifications. We find the 1.1 and 1.3 litre engines, but optimized. The first offers 64 horsepower and the second 75 horsepower, providing top speeds of 150 and 160 km per hour, respectively. In 1975, this 128 Sport received a facelift, becoming the 128 3P. Stripped of its curves, this coupe features a linear profile. While its front end, with 4 round headlights, is quite similar to the old SL models, the rear is deeply reworked with a large tailgate, offering a welcome practical side, and houses 6 small, highly original oval taillights. The interior is also deeply redesigned, whether in terms of the dashboard, the seats, or their upholstery. On the other hand, the mechanics remain unchanged. while Fiat 128s were exported to the United States, fitted from 1974 with impact bumpers to comply with American road safety laws. These Fiats were also produced in various countries. Surprisingly, in Spain, Seat only produced the 128 3P from 1976 to 1979 with Fiat engines, but specific ones, an 1197 cubic centimeter with 67 horsepower and a 1438 cubic centimeter with 77 horsepower. In Yugoslavia, starting in 1972, the Zastava brand successfully produced a hatchback version of the 128 sedan, the Z101, featuring its own unique lights as well as a tailgate. In 1980, the three-box version, called the Z128, also went into production, as well as a pickup version. Both featured the 1116 and 1290 cubic centimeter engines. Zastava models were also assembled in Egypt and in Poland by Polski Fiat. In South Africa, the Italian car was also assembled as a 2- and 4-door sedan, but was also transformed into a unique pickup truck. In Argentina, Fiat Concord produced the 4-door Fiat 128 sedan at its Cordoba plant, available with the same engines offered in Italy. In 1973, this range was expanded with a unique 5-door station wagon version. The Argentine 128s followed the European 128's evolution, but continued their career until 1990. For the final model years, they became the 128 Europa, with completely redesigned front and rear ends, equipped with either the 1362 horsepower engine or a 1582 horsepower engine. While Europeans were entitled to the 128 Rally, Argentinians could fall for the 128 models prepared by IAVIA, Industria Argentina de Vehículos de Avanzada, which boosted the little Fiat. Thus, depending on the model year, the 1100s developed 71, 88 or 100 horsepower, and the 1300s 88, 100 or 102 horsepower. The latter flirted with 180 km per hour and went from 0 to 100 km per hour in 10 seconds. These Fiat 128s won their category in the National Championship from 1972 to 1980 without interruption. In Europe, the 128s, especially the Coupes, dominated European circuits and built up a small list of achievements in their category. As with the Abarth, Fiat Multipla, depending on the country, special series like the Berlinetta Sport or the GTX, to name but a few. While the 128s were produced in Italy until 1983, they continued their career for many more years in Yugoslavia or Argentina. In total, Fiat sold nearly 4,430,000, including 255,000 in Argentina and over 1,270,000 in Yugoslavia under the Zastava brand. In Europe, the 128 retired in 1983, making way for the Fiat Ritmo, which was far less revolutionary, except for its original design, but which also enjoyed a fine career. But that is another story.